Have seen how to install and set up Jenkins, right? We installed it on this EC2 machine, and you can browse for the Jenkins URL here. IP address colon 8080 would show you the Jenkins page. Log in with the email and username and password that you had given when you installed Jenkins, and you can see the Jenkins dashboard. And I also did one more thing. I created a GitHub account for myself. I created a repository inside that. And assuming this is the repository where I have saved the project, and different developers would do their pushing whenever they make some commits, whenever they do some change into the software, they keep on doing their push into this repository in GitHub. So at any point of time, Tom could be one developer. I assume I am going to log into Tom's laptop. This is Tom. He can make any change whenever he want to make some change. I think he already made some change, but he is yet to push the change. He added this file, readme. Now I am going to do a push operation from. No, actually it is in the Paytm. He pushed it. So if I change my branch to Paytm, you can see the new file readme. So over here you can switch the branches by selecting on the branch here. You can see the files inside the given branch. Right now Tom pushed this particular file readme into Paytm branch, and you can see that in the Paytm branch here. Select branch as Paytm, you can see it came here. So this is the remote repository to which Tom and other developers are doing their push operations into. Whenever they make some modification in the source code, this is the repository that will get the change. So what I am going to do now is I want my Jenkins to get this code, check out this code from the Git repository. And over here you can see the URL for the GitHub, the remote repository. So Jenkins will do a clone operation, or it would do a checkout operation from the GitHub. Then it will get the complete code that you have saved inside the GitHub. So go to your Jenkins. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new job. So when I create a new job, I need to mention, tell to Jenkins that get the code from GitHub, build this code using and then you will get a war file. Deploy this war file into Tomcat. So like that, a number of details, a number of settings that you want to mention inside your job. So assume this is my EC2 machine where I am setting up Jenkins. If Jenkins want to check out the code from the GitHub, you should have Git installed inside this machine, of course. The git clone command Jenkins can run then in order to get the code from GitHub. Also, you should have installed and in here, because it is using and. Jenkins will build this source code and create the war file. And also, this software should be present inside your Jenkins server, and also you should install the plugins for this software inside Jenkins. Jenkins need to know how it can get the code from Git. Jenkins need to know how it can build the code using and. So in that case, you need to install some plugin on top of Jenkins that would give these features into Jenkins. If you install Git plugin in Jenkins, then Jenkins can check out the code from Git. If you install and plugin in Jenkins, then Jenkins can use and to build your code. So first I will install Git and inside my machine. Then I would install these plugins, Git plugin and plugin inside Jenkins. Then I will create this job. So first let me install these things inside my machine. I'll become the root user. Go into the user local. I already have and installed in this machine. Git is also installed in this machine. So JDK is also installed. I think we are all good. But Jenkins does not know where these things are installed. where is JDK located, or where is Apache Tomcat located, or where is and located. None of these things Jenkins know. So you need to inform Jenkins about the same. So this is where you need to go into, click on manage Jenkins. This is the link you need to click on if you want some configuration change to be made inside Jenkins. There is something called configure system. If you go here, you can set up some global settings inside Jenkins. And global tool configuration is the page you need to go into in order to set up the tools and inform Jenkins about these tools. For example, you install and inside your machine, then you want to tell Jenkins that it is at this particular location I have installed and, or you can install JDK inside your machine, then you need to tell Jenkins that it is inside this particular page where JDK is set up. So I come here, global tool configuration, then click on add JDK. I already installed JDK. Where did I install it? At this location, user local JDK 180.161. So I am telling Jenkins that this is where my JDK is located by clicking add JDK button, give it some name, my default Java or the default JDK, and uncheck this box install automatically. If you check it, then Jenkins will automatically download JDK and install it. Maybe in my case, I would rather want to install my favorite Java version, which I did the latest Java version. I installed it. That's it. Now I mentioned where exactly the Java home is located. Come down to Git. Yeah, this is fine. Git is just a executable file. Git is a command in Linux. So you can simply mention Git, or you can even mention the exact path to Git. You can even mention user bin Git, or you can simply mention Git, which is okay. And over here, you need to mention where your and is located. Give it some name, default and or something. Then uncheck this box, install automatically. Over here, you mention the and path. So that's it. Click on save button. And now Jenkins know where is JDK, where is and where is Git binary, everything Jenkins know now. Now I am going to go ahead and create a new job. Click on new item. Select freestyle project. Freestyle is the uh, general type of project that you need to add in Jenkins, where you have the different customization option you will get checking out the code from Git, building using and all these things. So give it some name. Let's say my project. Maybe I will give it the same name. My new project. My new project. Select freestyle and click on OK button. You would be taken to the configuration page, where you will see these different options which I will talk about. So under here you can see source code management. Actually that indicate how you can, where your git is your code is located. And if it is a GitHub project, you can check this box to indicate that this is a GitHub project. Then Jenkins know that this is a GitHub project. Then you can copy this URL. Basically they want to know the project URL. So I am pasting the URL here, and over here I need to mention from where Jenkins can check out the git code, check out the source code. That's what you can mention. So either you can set none, that means the source code, Jenkins will not check out the source code, or you can go with one of these things, git or subversion. Subversion is also a repository like git. So but in our case we are not going to talk about subversion. We are mostly focusing on git. So select git. GitHub is nothing but git, right? GitHub is nothing but, in the backend it is nothing but git. So over here I mentioned this is the URL where my code is located in. So Jenkins want to check out the code from this repository. That's what I am telling Jenkins by putting this URL here. So always remember, if Jenkins want to check out the code from GitHub, then Jenkins should have the SSH keys, right? If Jenkins want to check out the code from GitHub, Jenkins public key, right? You should have a private public key pair generated for Jenkins. This public key you need to copy into the GitHub, right? These things you need to complete before you could, before Jenkins could check out the code. So what I am going to do is I will switch to a user called Jenkins. Actually, whenever you install Jenkins, a Linux user called Jenkins would be created. So it is under this user Jenkins is actually running. So over here I mentioned this URL, then Jenkins will try to check out the code from this URL as the user Jenkins. So there is a Linux user called Jenkins, which is automatically created, and the home folder of the user is /var/lib Jenkins. So it is this particular user who is going to check out the code from the GitHub. So I'm going to create a key pair for this guy, SSH keygen. This is the private key and this is the public key. This public key I am going to import into GitHub. So now Jenkins can check out the code from GitHub if this public key of Jenkins is copied into GitHub. So into GitHub, I am copying this key as a deploy key. I go to the settings page because Jenkins does not want to do any push into the GitHub. It simply want to do the pull or clone operation, which does not need write access. You need only read access for Jenkins. So I am adding Jenkins key as the deploy key. So go to deploy key, click on deploy key, click on add deploy key. Over here, you can simply paste, or you can even mention Jenkins here. Click on add key, then you added a key. It will ask you for the password for confirmation. Provide the password and that's it. You added the public key of Jenkins as the deploy key. What it means is this key, using this key, Jenkins can check out the code from the GitHub. Okay, so you need to I mean, that is not enough. I mean, if you simply created the key pair and then import that into GitHub, that is not enough. Jenkins want to know where the private key is located. Actually, what credential should Jenkins should use in order to connect with GitHub, that you need to explicitly tell to Jenkins. So click on add credential, select Jenkins as the provider, and over here you have the option SSH username with private key. Select this option. Basically, you are simply adding a credential. The credential is nothing but the username would be Jenkins, and the key file is nothing but the ID RSA file, which is located inside .sh folder of Jenkins user. Right? This is your private key, right? It is saved inside .sh folder. So I can simply mention, I have three options. Either I can simply copy paste the entire key in this box by selecting this option, or I can select the second option. Then I can mention the complete file path like this, or I can simply select the third option. This is also fine, or I can simply select the third option. Then automatically it would look into the .sh folder and it will take this file and use this key to check out the code from GitHub. So I'm going with the third option. All three options will work. It's up to you to decide. So give it some description, give it some ID, Jenkins, and give it some description, Jenkins deploy key. Okay, so this credential I am adding. Then I will tell Jenkins that use this credential in order to get the code from GitHub. So click on add button, the credential will be added. Then from the drop down, I am selecting that credential. So I am basically telling Jenkins that use this credential in order to connect with the GitHub and check out the code from GitHub. So as you can see, as I selected this key, automatically the warning disappeared. Now basically Jenkins, it would try to connect with the GitHub and it was connecting. That's why the warning had disappeared. So over here you can mention which branch you want to build, master or Paytm or development branch, which branch that you want to build, that you can mention here. Generally, if it is a development branch that you want to watch, right, to which the developer keep on making changes, then you can put, instead of master, you can put development. In my case, there is no such branch called development. What I would do is I will create one. First, I will log into Tom's laptop. Right, inside Tom's laptop I am going to create a new branch. Git branch development. I'm going to create a new branch, and always remember the branch is getting created in the local repository, not in the remote. Git checkout development. Then you want to do a git add dot git commit to development, and now you want to do a push git push origin development. At this point only the development branch would be created in the remote repository, right? Whenever you do the push, at that time only development branch would be created in the GitHub. Okay, so now if you look at your GitHub, you can even see, refresh it. Okay, it automatically came here. Development less than a minute ago. Refresh it, then you can see there are 3 branches right now. Select the development, you can see the code in the development branch. Great. So this is the branch I want to watch. What I assume is it is to this particular branch my developers are going to make the commits, make the changes. Okay, so this is the branch I want to build. If I want to build multiple branch, I can just click on add branch, then I can mention whichever branch I want to build. So in this particular job I want to watch only development branch, and there are different build triggers which I will talk about later. So for now using this Jenkins will check out the code. You have mentioned enough details. Now Jenkins know how to check out the code from the Git. Now under the build step, next thing that you want to do is you want to use and to build your project. You check out the code from GitHub. You want to build the project using and. So under the build steps, select this option invoke and over here you have to select the and version. Remember you mentioned this default and under the global tool configuration, then you mention the path to the Apache and. So the default and is the name I had given. I am selecting my correct and version. Then over here I need to mention the target, or if I want the build file to be different, I can mention the exact build file name. If I don't mention that, by default it would take build.xml file. That's fine. Targets is var. You remember the and, right? How does your build file look like? It has number of targets. There's a var target, compile target, init target. So var depends on compile depends on init, and the default target is nothing but var. So even if I don't mention anything here, automatically var would be built because that is what you set as the default target to build. So you can leave it blank actually, nothing you need to mention. If you want, you can mention var is the target that you want to build. Build.xml file is the build file. The properties, if you want to set some option, you can mention that. Some Java options, Java home, or some Java variables that you want to specify, you can specify here. So in this case, I'm not mentioning anything. Then that's it. Maybe one more thing which I want to do is assume I have a Tomcat machine. I'm creating a new machine and I am going to install Tomcat inside that machine. And into that machine, I want to deploy this var file, right? After running this and job, it would build the source code and it would create the var file. This var file you want to deploy into a Tomcat machine. So basically, I'm going to create, assume this is my application server that I have inside my infrastructure to which I want to deploy this var file. So I'm going to create a machine. I am going to set up Tomcat inside that machine. And into that machine, I am going to deploy this var file that I am creating. So let me do that once, and later on, I will. This is my application machine, app001, which is nothing but it would run some Java application. I'm going to first install Tomcat inside this machine, and then Jenkins will deploy the var file into this machine, app001 machine. So let us go ahead and log into this machine. Go to user local, first download JDK and Tomcat. JDK 8, accept license agreement, Linux 64 is what I want to download. You just go ahead and copy the link address and download it to your EC2 machine, JDK. Then you want to download Tomcat. Copy the link address and download it to your user local folder. Then extract both JDK as well as right. So extract it tar-xcsrvf to extract the JDK. Then extract your Tomcat tar-xcsrvf Apache Tomcat. So you extracted both of them. Delete these other files. Sorry. Okay, this is your JDK. You want to export the path. User local JDK /bin, then user local JDK /jre/bin. Then open your bash RC, right? Of course, update this path change here. So I'm starting Tomcat now. Go to bin folder and start Tomcat. So now I want to deploy this war file. In the web apps folder, there would be some default applications, but instead of that, I am going to, my Jenkins is going to create a war file now. This war file I want to deploy into Tomcat. For that, there is a plugin that you want to install. Actually, always keep one thing in mind. You already installed Git plugin inside Jenkins. You did not install it manually. If you remember yesterday, we had an option when we installed Jenkins. There was an option install suggested plugins. Git was one of them. That is why you didn't have to explicitly install it. Git was one of the plugin that you already installed when you install Jenkins. Even and is also one plugin that you installed along with suggested plugins. So that is the reason these options are appearing at all. Otherwise, if you look at the add build step, you will not even see this option invoke and. The invoke and option came because you already installed and plugin inside Jenkins. Otherwise, or even if you look at the source code management, you would not see this option Git if you did not have installed Git. Yeah, so in case of Tomcat, actually, you need a plugin, a separate plugin to be installed in Jenkins because by default, Jenkins does not have the plugin that can deploy a war file into Tomcat. There's a plugin in Jenkins called, you can search in Google if you know, let's say, Jenkins plugin to deploy to Tomcat. Search in Google something like this, then you will get, there's a plugin called deploy plugin in Jenkins. Or there is something called remote deploy to container or something. Deploy to container plugin is another plugin in Jenkins using which you can deploy to a Tomcat machine. These are different plugins that you can use in order to deploy a remote machine. So inside Jenkins, first I will install that plugin. That's the first step I have to do. Otherwise, if I look at here, add build step or add post build action, you won't see an option to deploy the war files. So now I will install this plugin in Jenkins. So for now, I am going to save this job. Later, I can come back and edit this job actually. So first I will go ahead and install this plugin. So go back to the Jenkins dashboard, click on manage Jenkins, click on manage plugins. Over here I can search for a plugin called, click on available tab, click on install tab. You can see the list of plugins that are already installed. You can see ant plugin is already installed, git plugin is also already installed. So there are a number of plugins that are already installed inside your Jenkins by default. So what I want to do is I want a plugin, the remote to container plugin, using which I can, sorry, it's deploy to container, right? Let's say plugin called deploy to container. So check this one, then click on install now after the restart. Then this would be automatically installed. Jenkins have this plugin installed. Now if you go to your job, you would see an option deploy war file, which I will select, and then I will deploy into my Tomcat. So make a note, remember you have one EC2 machine that is running Jenkins and another EC2 machine which is running Tomcat. So it is to this particular Tomcat machine you want to deploy a war file remotely. How you will do that? Either you can do a copy, a SSH copy through SCP command or something, or using rsync. Basically through SSH I can copy the war file which Ant would generate into this Tomcat machine's webapps folder. That is one option. The other option is there is something called remote deployment on Tomcat. What you need to do is you need to create a user inside Tomcat. Then Jenkins can use that username and password to connect with the remote Tomcat and deploy the war file remotely. It's possible. You can actually have a third-party tool or a script to connect with the Tomcat and deploy war file remotely. You can do that. What you need to do is inside Tomcat, first you have to create a user with permissions to deploy war file remotely. Then use those credentials inside your Jenkins. Then Jenkins can do this deployment using these user credentials. So that is what I'm going to do. So I will log into my Tomcat machine. This is my Tomcat machine. So I'm going to connect with this machine, and inside Tomcat I'm going to create a user. Go to the Tomcat folder, user local Apache Tomcat conf folder. Open the file tomcat usage.xml. This is a user configuration file in Tomcat. Open this file, come down. This is where you can create the user. I'm commenting this. This is how you comment out XML file, right? It start here, the command start here, command end here. So I'm just removing this command so that this would become part of configuration. What I want to do is I want to create a user called Tomcat, and I want to create a role called manager script. Manager script something. Yeah, manager script is the role that you should need to add the Tomcat user to if you want him to have permission to deploy war file remotely. So first I will create this role called uh, manager script. Then I am going to create a user called Tomcat. So these are the two lines I need to put. This line would enable this role manager script. Then I'm going to create a user with a password. I can give any password, let's say role. I can put manager script. So basically this two lines would actually create a user Tomcat with this password and add him to this role manager script. Manager script is a special role in Tomcat which would actually enable the user to be able to deploy war file remotely. So inside Tomcat, I create this user. Then inside Jenkins, I would use this credential to deploy the war file remotely. So I'm going to restart Tomcat now. I made some change. I need to restart Tomcat. First, I will shut down and then I will start. Mm, okay, so Tomcat is started. Now inside my Jenkins, what is the URL for Tomcat? IP address colon 8080, right? So first I have to open the port 8080 in the firewall. Okay, this is the machine where I have Tomcat and this is the machine where I have Jenkins. So this is the URL for Tomcat, IP address colon 8080, right? This is the URL for Tomcat, and to this URL I want to deploy the war file which Jenkins would create. So go back to your job, log in with your password. Then once you're logged in, since you already created the job, you can see the job in the front page. Click on the job to open the job. Then click on configure on the left side. You can see the same page, the configure page of the given job. You already mentioned this, checking out the code from GitHub. Then after checking out the code from GitHub, Jenkins would use and to build the code, create war files. And this war file you want to deploy into Tomcat. So you already installed the remote to container plugin. Now you select this option under post build action. Select this box. You can see a new option called deploy var to a container, var or ER file to a container. Select this option. It will ask you which file you want to copy. So basically, whatever var file created by the previous and job, I would put star.var. Double star means do a recursive search and whatever file that end with .var would be deployed into the remote Tomcat. So over here you have the option add container. There are these like Tomcat. There are other application server also, JBoss, Glassfish. These are different application server. So in my case, it is a Tomcat 7 to which I want to do the deployment. So select Tomcat 7 and the credentials you need to put, right? Again, you need to add another credential, which is nothing but the username and password that you have created inside your Tomcat. Click on add button, select Jenkins, and here select username and password. Username is Tomcat, password is DevOps12345. Then select that credential. These are the credential which Jenkins would use to connect with the Tomcat. And what is the Tomcat URL? That's what you need to specify here. The Tomcat URL is this, IP address colon 8080. So if I have multiple Tomcat machines, sometimes in general cases, actually, there would be multiple Tomcat machines to which I want to deploy. So in that case, I can add multiple containers, keep on adding add container button, then specify the URL of the other Tomcat. So like that, I can add multiple containers and the var file would be deployed into all these containers. And maybe I want to send out an email on failure. I can go ahead and select this option, email notification. Here I can mention, let's say, if there is any failure, this recipient will be notified. Send email for every unstable build. If there is any problem with the build or if there is any error, I want this guy to be notified. Right? I can mention the mail IDs here. So like that, you have different option. Public IP, you can give the private IP also, and that's not a problem in this particular case. If private IP is an option, even you prefer to give a private IP only, right? Sometimes your Tomcat machine would be listening only on the private IP. The situation would be something like you have Apache running in the front, then you have Tomcat running in the back. So it is to this Tomcat machine you want to do the deployment. Maybe you want to use this private IP only to do the deployment, which is a more secure way. if you use the private IP. In this case, anyway, I am using the public IP. I can use the private IP also, but yeah, I put the public IP here anyway. In which case we will use multiple Tomcat path in the container. No need to mention the Tomcat path in the container. We can simply mention the base URL of Tomcat. The path would be nothing but whichever var file that you deploy, that would become the path. You deploy and example.var, then inside the web apps, a new folder would be created and example that would become the path. So here you don't need to mention any path, simply mention the base Tomcat URL. Okay, so click on save button, that's it. Click on build now button. So if I click on build now button, I am building this entire job. What all things the job would do? First, it would check out the code from the Git. Then it would build the code using and. Then it will deploy the var file into Tomcat remote Tomcat machine. Then finally it would send a notification if there are any errors in one of these previous steps. It would send out an email to my mail ID. So these 4 steps the single job would do. So just click on build now. Let's see what happens. Build scheduled. You can see the build is now being running. You can see the status here. The below you can see the status. You can also see the build number. So you need to do this same job again and again. Developer makes some change in the class. Let's say some developer added a new Java class, or they made some new fixes, they implemented some new feature, made a new commit to the development branch. So each time there is a change in the development branch, you would prefer to do one more build that would contain the latest change. So each time developer make a change, all you need to do is just click on the build now button. Everything will happen. Jenkins will check out from Git, build using and, then deploy the var file into Tomcat, and you can even see the URL in the Tomcat slash and example. Browse for the URL, you can see the application here. So then your developers are making some change. They are adding some new class, they are adding some new field or something. All you need to do is just come here and click on build now button. Again the same build will happen. Then immediately you can actually browse for the URL, you can see the changes. It wouldn't take much time. So each time, so it is completely automated. Developer can actually focus on their own coding part, and the building part would be completely automated by Jenkins. All you need to do is just click on build now button. It would start a entire build. Okay, so do you really prefer you coming into this page and then manually clicking on the build now button each time developer make a change? Of course, right? Whenever there's a change in the development branch, you want to do this build job. Whenever a developer make a new push into the development branch in the GitHub, into the GitHub remote repository, somebody is doing a number of commits they made into their local repo, then they pushed into the remote development branch. This is the development branch. So each time a developer is making a change into development branch, probably you want to do the building, right? You don't want to come here each time whenever you want to do a build. Maybe you would schedule this build, run the build every 1 hour, something you would want to do, or maybe run the build every 1 hour and do the build only if there is a new commit coming into the development branch. Or maybe what you want to do is each time there is a new commit coming from the developer, do a build. So for each and every push a developer is making to the development branch, automatically start the building. So there would be multiple triggers that you want to mention when you want. So depending on your requirement, you can have different triggers, how this job would be triggered, how this build would be triggered. Depending on different scenarios you want to do it, you don't really wish to come here all the time, then manually click on this link to do the building. So we will see how you can do that automatically. Yes, the var file, each time a new var file is copied into Tomcat, Tomcat will deploy it. Is there a option to invoke a script post the var file is over remotely? Is there an option to invoke the script? Actually, it would not, the build will not be successful if the deployment is not successful. Basically, Jenkins would copy the var file to the remote. It does not simply copy the var file and then move on. It would actually check if it is getting deployed. If it is not deployed successfully, this build job would fail. It would mark as a failure. So if there are any errors in any of these steps, this build would be marked as a failure. Right now, you see this green color because both times all these steps had successfully completed. That's why you see this green color over here. If any of these steps had failed, it would be red. Okay. So, what I am going to do right now is we will just, okay, first we will see the output, right? The build job are successful. Click on the build number. Then you can see, you would be taken to that build page where you can see who started this build, which revision it is, which is the branch being built, all these things you can see. You can further click on console output over here. You can see the output from the console. First, it is started by Basil, and then it is into this folder. Jenkins is checking out the Git repository. So go into this folder in Jenkins. So go to your Jenkins server here. This is your Jenkins server, right? No, this is your Tomcat machine. Let me log into the Jenkins server. Log into Jenkins, go to the workspace folder, right? That is the folder, right? Over here in the console output, you can see it is inside workspace. A new folder with the same project name is created, my new project. So go to the my new project folder. This is where it would check out the code from Git. And it is successfully completed. Checkout is successfully completed here. Okay. Now this is completed. Checking out code from Git is completed. Now it is running this and command to build. It is executing the and command. File is build.xml. Var is the target that it is executing. And it would take the build file automatically from the same folder, workspace project folder, where Jenkins had already checked out the code. Then it would run this targets one by one. First, the init target would run, which would create build and dist folders. You can see build and dist folders are already created. Then compile job, which would compile the classes. And finally, the var target, which would actually create the var file. And it says build is successful. So, and is completed. Now, the remote to deploy is now getting invoked. Basically, it is deploying the var file into the Tomcat 7 container, and that is also success. So you can see the console output. If there are any errors, you can see that error in the output. So let's say there is an error. I am manually trying to make some error here. I'm just configuring my job and I am mentioning some wrong credentials here. into the Tomcat, right? I'm mentioning some wrong credential now. I would add a different credential, Tomcat1 and some unknown password I am putting. Click on add button. Then I am selecting Tomcat1 as the credential. So basically this will fail. This step would fail because there is no such user called Tomcat1. So you will not be able to deploy the var file into Tomcat container using this plugin. So now click on save button. Now you try to build it. You would see, click on build now. The build would fail at the last step. Deploy to container, it would fail, right? You can see now it is red in color. Click on the number, you will be taken to the same page where you can see the summary. Now click on console output, you can see, come down, you can see the error. Build step failed with exception, failed to deploy. If you come down, you can see some meaningful error. Actually, this is nothing but the Tomcat error caused by username and password is incorrect. Yeah, so this way you can see the console output, and any error that you have got, you can find it here. So this way it is very easy to troubleshoot if you find any problem with any of the jobs. So let me go ahead and fix it. All I need to do is just select the right credentials here. Now if I build it, this time it would be successful. We can add chef in addition to Jenkins. Yes, we can have the Jenkins run the chef client command on the machines.
Basil, if that is the case, then how can we, add softwares to other servers? I mean, with the help of Chef.
How can we add software to chef?
I mean, installing softwares and all those things. So, do we need to make all the pre-configuration settings in the Chef client, and then we'll be just running Chef from here?
You can do. Yes. So you have a chef server where you already wrote the configuration, and you have the machines where you want to run the chef client command. This execution of chef client you can automate using Jenkins. You have a number of machines where you want to run the chef client command that would automatically set up the machines. You can use Jenkins to run chef client command on these machines. Maybe sometimes when you run some job, that would include making sure that your machine is up to date with the software configurations. So before your Jenkins would do some deployment, it would run chef client command on the machine to make sure that the machine is up to date. So what you need to do in that case is you can come here in the configure page under the build job. You have this option execute shell, something like that. Under the build job, there is something called execute shell. So over here, you can scroll back to the top. Basically, before the var file creation, you want to make sure that the machine is up to date. So you can run the chef client command or any Linux command you can execute by selecting this option execute shell. Then you can put any Linux command, it would run. You want to copy the var file into, let's say you are running this job on the same machine where Tomcat is running, then all you want to do is copy the var file into the webapps folder. So you can run this cp command, then and example var, right? Webapps. So you can run the copy command manually here also. So any Linux command you want to run, you can run the Linux commands by selecting this option execute shell. Okay. Yeah, so that's That's pretty much about building a Git project. So take a short break and we will continue in 5 minutes. I am pausing the recording. Remind me if I haven't started the recording after the break. Uh, we will continue in 5 minutes. So, like I said, when developers make change to a branch, change to the Git, you don't really want to come here each time when you want to do a build and click on it. Instead, let the build run automatically, right? That is one of the core principle of DevOps, right? You don't really need to wait for the build job to run, right? The build job, when it is running, it is coordinating everything for you. So you want this build job to be keep on running, which would continuously integrate developers change into the system. Yesterday we discussed about this pipeline developer making change into the Git. It is automatically getting built into executable files, the war files or exe files, whatever. Then this code would be deployed into a testing environment. Maybe your Tomcat machine would be there, Apache machine would be there. Sometimes you want to copy the PHP scripts into the var HTML. Sometimes you want to deploy the var file into Tomcat using the way how we did it. Sometimes you want to deploy a Ruby application, or sometimes you want to install a software in the one of the machines. So all these things that you can do using Jenkins. Or and once it is done, sometimes you want to do some testing inside this infrastructure to make sure that everything is looking good. If it is looking good, the report would be verified, and then this change done by developer would be marked as stable. So this is something that you need to do it very continuously than randomly. So that would integrate the changes done by developers to the system in a continuous way, or this is what you actually call the continuous integration. Fine. So you want this job to be running very frequently, maybe every 1 hour or maybe every 15 minutes, right? The less it is, better it is, right? The lesser schedule it is, better it is. More frequently, the developers changes are integrated. Or sometimes you want it like whenever a developer make a change, then automatically this would start. So there can be different triggers that you want to put based on your requirement. So go to your Jenkins, go to your project, and over here you can see, go to the configure page, you can see different options here. When you want to trigger a build, you can see there are 5 options. Either you can set this option build periodically, something like a cron job in Linux. Star, 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 star. You put 5 star, then it would indicate every minute build it. First star indicate the minute, second star indicate the hour, third star indicate the day of the month, fourth star indicate the month of the year, last star indicate the day of the week. So you put full star, then it means every minute it would continuously run forever. Or you want to put 0, then it would indicate only the 0th minute you want to run it. That means it would become every hour on 0th minute. Or you mentioned 2 here, then it means every day at 2 o'clock, 2 a.m. you want to run it. So like this, you can actually mention at what time you want to build it. So you can specify the period where you want to do the building. So every hour or every minute, whatever time that you mention here, automatically the build job would run. You don't have to come here and click on build now button. Automatically it would run every hour. So sometimes within 1 hour there may not be any change done by developers. In that case, your build is actually a waste, right? Maybe the developer keep on doing the push. That's what you assume. There is a development branch in the GitHub to which developers keep on doing the push. They are copying their commits into the GitHub by doing push operation. Sometimes there can be a good amount of gap between two push operations, more than 1 hour. So at this point of time, you did a build, and at this point of time, you did another build, but there are no push happened in between. It is a waste, right? You are doing the same build again. So this is a better option in that particular case. There is something called Paul SEM. Paul SEM, again, it is a periodical build. You need to mention when you want to build it. Let's say every 1 hour, you need every hour you can mention 0, then all star. This means every 1 hour. So if you select this option Paul SEM and mention the schedule, same thing would happen. Every 1 hour it would do the building. But the building will happen only if there is a new change in the GitHub. If there are absolutely no push happened in the last 1 hour, it will not do the building. So it would do the building at this specified schedule if there is a change in the GitHub. Otherwise, it won't build. So this way you can avoid the duplicate builds you can avoid by using this way. Okay. And then you have other options like build triggers, trigger builds remotely. What it means is you have the Jenkins here, and somebody from outside call a given URL, which will in fact connect with your Jenkins server and start the build. Sometimes you want to do it maybe from a script. You are writing a script that would make some change into the source code. Then it would call a URL which will do the building. So sometimes you want to do the building using a script. In that case, all you can do is just generate a URL which, if it is called from outside, will connect with the Jenkins and it would trigger the build. That is what I mean by build trigger builds remotely. Here you can mention some authentication token. You can mention some token here. Then automatically the URL would become the Jenkins URL. That means which is nothing but in my particular case the IP address colon 8080 slash job my new project. This one, instead of this token name, I can put this actual value that I put here. So using that URL, anyone from outside can access that URL. Then the job would immediately start. That would be the trigger. So by using a authentication token, I can pass this authentication token to a person who is sitting outside my Jenkins server. He can, using this token, he can mention that in this URL. Then he can trigger the job inside my Jenkins. Or you can have this option build after other projects are built. Let's say you have created one project and you have one more project, and this project you want to build only if this project is successfully built. So first this job would run in Jenkins. If this job is successful, then you want to start the second job. So that would be the trigger. So a successful job would be triggering your second job. So that is also something I can do, which we will see later. And otherwise, then you can have this option GitHub hook trigger for Git SEM polling. If you remember, we had seen yesterday how GitHub can be integrated with Jenkins. What you need to do is install GitHub plugin inside Jenkins that we already installed actually yesterday when we installed the all suggested plugin. This also came. If you look at the plugins page, click on manage plugins, then you can click on uh, manage plugins. Over here, click on install. You can see there's a plugin called GitHub plugin. Over here you have a GitHub plugin. Yeah. So this plugin would be integrated with GitHub. Using this plugin, Jenkins can be integrated with GitHub. So inside the GitHub, what you need to do is Go to your project. From the settings tab, you have an option called integration and services. Over here, click on add service, then select Jenkins from the drop down. Jenkins GitHub plugin, select it from the drop down. Over here, you need to mention the Jenkins hook URL. This is the Jenkins plugins URL, uh, GitHub webhook. So replace this value with the actual Jenkins URL that you can find here. Okay. So click on add service. That's it. Okay. I think I mentioned the wrong URL. I put 2 HTTP. Yeah. So that's it. That's it. Now your Jenkins is integrated with GitHub. Okay. Now what you can really do is check this box inside the Jenkins job, which I already did. Basically, GitHub hook would trigger the job. So what it means is when anybody made a push operation into the GitHub, that would trigger a job to be running inside my Jenkins. It would send a notification to my Jenkins server, which will in fact start the build. Better, right? So each time a push operation happens, build will also automatically start. The new code which developers had pushed would be built into executable, and this series of process deploying and testing, everything would be executed. So I am going to select this option, click on save button. Now let's say Tom is going to make some change into the development branch. I'm going to log into Tom's laptop. Go to the Tom repo folder. He's going to make some change. He's modifying the README file, adding some content. Saving this file, git add operation, then git commit operation. Git push operation. Not to the master, the development branch. Remember, it is the development branch your Jenkins is monitoring. In the configure page, you mention the branch to be development, right? Here you mention development as the branch which this job would monitor. Okay, so I'm going to do the push. So after I did the push, build will automatically start. As you can see, if you go to the job, you can see 4 build have been done so far. Now I run this command git push origin development. Then it would trigger a build. Immediately you would find a 5th job get started. You can see it got started already. Right? It has started. You click on the console output. You can see the job being run. It is already successful. Right? So this way you can do. So each time a developer make a commit or do a push to the GitHub development branch, it would trigger a build. Makes sense, right? SCM means nothing but source code management. SCM means source code management. Git, SVN, Perforce, all these are source code management tools. We learned Git. So SCM means
Basil, I have one doubt actually.
Yeah. What?
Basil, actually, if one developer checked in for a particular time, like 10:50, if like that build is going on, and in 10:55 another developer also checked in, like that build is not completed. If this build again trigger, means it will override that build, right?
we will talk about it.
Okay.
Actually, that's what we are going to talk next. You can actually throttle the builds, or you can even put a delay between the builds. That we will see. So click on your project. Again, go to the configure page. You can see the details of your project. Over here, you have different options that you can see here. Discard old builds. So sometimes, let's say, each time Jenkins do a building, a war file is getting created, and the war file would be saved inside Jenkins. And sometimes you want the war files to be deleted automatically. Maybe you need to keep the war file for 1 or 2 days, then delete the remaining. So you can go with this option, discard all build. Then you can actually mention how many build that you want to retain. Maybe you can mention keep 2 days build, delete the remaining, or keep only last 10 build, delete everything else. So like that you can actually mention how to discard all build. That would save you a lot of disk space. You don't really need to keep all these build, right? Obviously you don't. If you want to build, you can build at any point of time. There is no need to keep the build files longer, because you already have your code in the git. At any point of time you want to do a building, you can do the building. So it's yeah. So the project is parameterized. Okay, sometime let's say you want to add some parameter and pass the parameter along with you do the building. I will show you. I'm adding a string parameter. Give it some name. Let's say branch is equal to development. Development is the default value, but I can pass the branch as a argument when I do the building. So I am just unchecking this box. GitHub hook trigger. I am unchecking this. What I am going to do is I am mentioning a parameter called branch. Default value, if you don't mention it, by default it would be development. Then come down to your job. Over here you mentioned the branch which you want Jenkins to build. Instead of specifying the development like this here, I would mention like this, branch. I mention branch as a variable, and this variable you are going to pass along with you do the building. As a parameter, you would pass this variable to your Jenkins job. Make sense? So I'm going to save this. Now the build now option is changed with build with parameters. So click on build with parameters. Then it would ask you to select the branch that you want to build. I put development, then it will build the development branch. Or if I put a production, if I put master, it would build the master branch. So it would, you can basically pass whichever branch that you want to build as a parameter. If you look at the 7th job, you can see this time it is the master which is being built. Where is that? Yeah, it is the master which is being built. Okay, so this way you can actually decide which branch you want to build. So not just the branch, any parameter. Let's say you want the parameter to be passed by uh, through the build job, you can actually create parameters. Okay, so I'm just going to uncheck this. I'm changing back the settings. It's development, and here I am checking this. Okay, save it. Fine. So the other options are throttle build. So basically, you can mention how many times between the builds. So here I mentioned number of build 2. Then what it means is within an hour 2 build can run, or if I put 3, what it means is within an hour up to 3 build can run, approximately 20 minutes between the build. If I put 4, then it would say 15 minutes between the builds, because within 1 hour up to 4 build will run. So this way I can throttle the build. So if I some build got started and next build also got started, it will hold the second build for 15 minutes, and it is only after 15 minutes only it would start the second build. This way you can throttle the build, or you can even mention only one build per hour. Okay, or here you can select a day, 2 builds per day. Like that you can actually mention how you want to throttle your builds. And disable the project, which would actually disable the project. You cannot build the project anymore. That's what this option would do. And execute concurrent builds if necessary. So if you check this box, if there are concurrent builds, Jenkins would let it execute the concurrent builds. That's what this option would do. So these are the different options that you can put inside your Jenkins. Okay. So yeah. So any questions? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Basil, that I asked you that multiple builds, right? So according to our like how much time taking per build, then only we can divide that according to our time, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So we will wind up here today, and tomorrow we will continue with Jenkins. I think we need 2 more classes to finish Jenkins. Then 1 class for Puppet and Ansible. 1 class for final rounds of interview preparation and everything. So 4 classes is what we need now to complete our training. And I believe you will not have classes this weekend, right? I will confirm this tomorrow.
Basil, can you just upload this video now?
Yeah, I'll do.
Yeah, thank you, Basil.